Hey everybody, before we get started on this, I decided to try my hand at a little bit of merchandise for the channel, so you can check it out in the description section below. Let's get into it. Hey YouTubers, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell over by the subscriber button to notify you every single time I upload. Alright guys, so today we're going to be talking about American Horror Story 1984, episode 9, the finale of this season, entitled Final Girl. And for what it's worth guys, I'm going to say this at the end because I feel like it's worth repeating. This was a good season, one of the best that we've seen in years, a palate cleanser for the crossover season that we got last year, and a rejuvenation of the entire franchise, something that Sarah Paulson said recently, in that no one person is the star of American Horror Story, the show is the star of itself, and it doesn't matter what story they want to tell or who is going to be in it because it can still be good. If you needed any proof of that, even almost 10 years out from when this show started, this was the season to watch. With that being said, we're going to go into this review like we go into all of the reviews. We're going to be talking about things that we liked versus things that we didn't like before we go into the play-by-play of what happened in this episode. And I guess it's kind of important to start with the things that we didn't like, because even though things happened really quickly, and I'm going to get into that in a second, this episode, at least to me, was still pretty solid. And look, I can understand why you might be mad about what happened in this week's episode, knowing that the finale was rushed and we didn't get enough time with these characters, or everything was just kind of spoon-fed to us through select flashbacks of what happened at the very end of 1989, and we didn't get the music festival, and that all of the alive characters have somewhat of a happy ending. I mean, you could just go on and on, but if you know American Horror Story, guys, and honestly, I guess that this isn't the best type of excuse, but if y'all have been watching this since the very beginning, you know they have a very hard time sticking the landing. The best thing you can hope for is something that genuinely makes you feel better after watching it, and that's what this episode did for me. I mean, spoilers from here on out, guys, but you've been warned. I've been saying for weeks now that the only way this season can end is a family reunion between Benjamin, his mother, his brother Bobby, and his son Bobby in the modern day, and lo and behold, that's exactly what we got, with a nice touching song and a message for everyone watching that really contextualizes why I believe it was called 1984 to begin with. I talked about this in one of my previous videos, but the quote that Montana says at the very end, "Tell our ghost stories to your children so the 80s will never die," or just something along those lines. I love that line, and it really helps put the entire series into perspective. As I said in my previous video, Ryan Murphy grew up and found their independence in the 80s. It's where they got their creative spark from, and something that they're trying to holler back to in recent modern day culture. This is why there's so much nostalgia towards the 80s these days, and what they're trying to say throughout this entire season, and maybe even saying throughout the bigger scope of American Horror Story. One of the reasons they're doing this show and they have so much fun with it is because they're truly inspired by the things that inspired them when they were still young. So honestly, I'm a huge fan of that, and it's one of the things I really liked about this episode. One of the things I didn't like about this episode, and you guys have to go down to the comment section below right now if you understand this, because what is the deal with Ramirez? I guess you can say because they went back in time in Apocalypse, this is a new timeline, not the original one that we saw throughout the first 8 seasons, but that doesn't really make any sense because Ramirez was in the Hotel Cortez in season 5. Now, did he get away from that one night, but how was he older? I guess you could say it wasn't the same actor. It still really doesn't make any sense, because at least I feel like I'm gonna have to go back and research this, but if you guys know off the top of your head, then share it in the comments. What is going on with his character? I felt like they established that he already died and remained dead, and that's one of the reasons he's allowed to go to the Hotel Cortez, at least on that night. But Devil's Night does work in weird ways, so I could be completely wrong. He could be in Camp Redwood the entire time and was just allowed to go there on that specific night of the year. It's still a really interesting and strange twist to just put Ramirez's character on a loop for 30 years as the ghosts from Camp Redwood keep killing him so he can't leave to go kill Bobby. That's something I wasn't expecting, and I'm sure most people watching this weren't either. In fact, given what we already knew about the character, that's probably one of the biggest twists of this season. But anyway, let's get into the breakdown of what happened in tonight's episode. The episode begins in modern day 2019 when we're finally introduced to Finn Wittrock's character, who we're later told is Bobby. That is the most obvious theory that everybody has been talking about over the last couple of weeks. And honestly, one of the best things about that is they introduce him by showing a Prius. And I felt like that was the most obvious gag for a 2019 California setting. When Bobby is walking around the camp, he notices a wood chipper, which you just know is going to become really important later on. We see Bobby going around the camp taking photos of everything until he runs into Montana, who tells him that she hasn't seen anyone for multiple decades after what happened in 1989, after which she implores him to leave because he's in danger and that anyone he might run into is going to probably kill him. From there, we jump into a cabin where Montana introduces Bobby to Trevor, and then we get to see the fun that we saw in last week's promo trailer, where they show Bobby just how invincible they are and their ghost powers before they sit down and get to business. They want to know why Bobby came to the camp, and he tells them that he's looking for his father. They inform him that they haven't seen Mr. Jingles in about 30 years, and then they go into depth about what happened during Halloween in 1989. It turns out that Margaret pretty much went on a killing spree, killing Courtney and then going to kill Trevor when they realize that Trevor is blocking the entrance and forcing everyone to go away when he realizes what Margaret is up to. Unfortunately for Trevor, when she does get to him, she shoots him almost dead, once in the dick, which just really hurt watching, honestly. But her plan is to hurt him so bad that he cannot crawl into Camp Redwood and thus be a ghost there. Montana does show up at the last minute to try to coax him to crawl in, but he just simply doesn't have the strength. And then Brooke just comes out of nowhere to pick him up and pull him across the line. So when he does die, he turns into a ghost, but we already knew that was the case because we saw him be a ghost in 2019. I mean, really, so much for twists during this entire season. One of the things Montana says when Brooke saves Trevor is that Brooke helped her realize how evil that she had become and that she didn't want to be that person anymore. And I honestly have a problem with that because I felt like that was the exact same character motivation and development that she got in last week's episode. Just going back over it and giving that to Brooke in order to kind of smooth everything over felt a little bit cheap to me. Trevor and Montana tell Bobby that one of the things they've been doing over the course of the last 30 years is killing Ramirez over and over and over again, so he won't come back to life, get out, and go kill Bobby in revenge for what Mr. Jingles has done to him. And look, I already talked about what I thought about that at the beginning of this video, so let's just move on. Also, when you're talking about serial killers, it's kind of sad that they killed off Dylan McDermott so ungracefully. I mean, he was there, he was doing stuff, and then he was just out. I wish that they had actually expanded upon that. The episode then cuts to 20 minutes before, where we get to see Birdie and Chet making out as they're waiting for Ramirez to come back to life so they can kill him again. They don't notice him coming back to life, and he ends up getting the drop on them and giving him enough time to go and find Trevor and Montana just to hear that Bobby is in fact Mr. Jingles' son, the person that he's been wanting to kill this entire time. So Ramirez makes a play for Bobby, but ultimately is unsuccessful as all the other ghosts crowd around him and try to get him out. It seems like this isn't the first time that this has happened, even though they didn't really give any indication that it wasn't. I also really like the montage of them just repeatedly killing Ramirez over and over and over again, because I felt like that was them having a lot of fun with slasher movie tropes. Anyway, as Bobby is trying to make his way out of Camp Redwood, Montana tells him to go to the asylum and ask for the director there. When he gets there, of course we know it's Donna, and she sits him down to try to explain to him everything that she knows occurred on that night. We go back to 1989 as Margaret is trying to get the bus moved so she can have her concert when all the ghosts rally around her outside in order to meet her in a mob mentality. Margaret's then assaulted by Donna and then Brooke, who is ultimately shot and left for dead on the ground as Margaret is pulled outside, chopped to pieces, and put through the wood chipper that we saw at the very beginning of the episode. I told you guys that would definitely come back in some way. And all of her remains are shot off the property so she won't come back. Knowing all of this, or at least thinking they know all this, Bobby finally tells Donna thank you for all the checks that he's gotten throughout the years to help support him, but Donna has no idea of anything about these checks. This leads both of them to go to the bank routing place where the checks came from and find, lo and behold, Brooke is still alive. She didn't die on the floor. Ray saved her, and both of them declare each other the final girl. After the long-awaited reunion reunion between Donna and Brooke, Bobby declares that he has to go back to Camp Redwood in order to go meet his father. There's just really no getting around Camp Redwood for these characters. Once you're there, it keeps pulling you back in until everything is completely resolved. So just like that, Bobby ignores all of the telltale signs that he will definitely be in trouble if he goes back to Camp Redwood, goes back there, and is instantly in trouble again when Margaret shows up out of nowhere. Turns out she did die right before they put her through the wood chipper, and thus she's been sitting around and biding her time waiting for Bobby to come, simply so she can once again stick it to Benjamin. I mean, really, how much of a monster do you have to be in order to do that? He's literally done nothing to you at this whole time. He wasn't even in the mob that killed you. But from the get-go, as soon as she shows up, you know that's obvious, and then you also know that Benjamin is going to come and save his son at the very last second. Then you also know that they're going to take just enough time to talk with each other instead of getting the hell out of camp for Margaret to come back to life again, stab Benjamin, and then force him to run away until he's saved yet again, this time by his grandmother. They take care of Margaret, he runs away, and the episode ends with a family reunion between Benjamin, his mother, and the two Bobbies. And you know what? Even though I've been telling you guys for weeks that that's the only way any of this could really end, I'm really glad it did. I felt like that was a nice little touching moment, and it really did help bookend this season. All in all, I would really have to say a pretty solid standalone season of American Horror Story, one of the best that we've seen in years, and I hope you guys agree with me. For me, it acted way more as a palate cleanser from the mega crossover season that we got from last year, and it felt somewhat invigorating to have somewhat of a rebooted season that didn't rely on some of the bigger narratives from the show previous, or even some of its bigger stars. I'm happy with this season, and I want to hear everybody's thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell over by the subscriber button to notify you every single time I upload. It's been real.